All right. Hello and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I am Laura Turner, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order at the Burr Ridge Service Center on Friday, September 28th at 1 p.m. Emily, can you call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr. Dave Barry.
Here.
Sue Brusenbart.
Here.
Michael Campbell.
Here.
Gwen Gregory. Liza Hickey.
Here.
Jay Caston.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Daisy Porter Reynolds. Dee Reynolds.
Here.
Nadia Shake.
Here.
Michelle Simmons.
Here.
Are you? I think you're
Muted,
muted, Michelle.
You're able to hear me now?
We can see your lips moving.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
We'll get it fixed.
And Laura Turner.
Here. Okay, thank you. Let's do recognition of guests and announcements. Do we have guests in Burr Ridge?
Yes.
Where are we starting?
Mark Hatch, Rails.
Josh Metzolis, I'm with SIUE, LASA. We helped to do some of the analysis that we're going to present.
Zach Slisher, also working for LASA at SIUE.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
Dan Berg, Stickich.
Mary Witt Rails.
Emily Feister Rails.
Jane Plass Rails.
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Ryan Heppel, Rails.
Joe Philippek, Rails.
Okay, do we have guests in East Peoria?
Yes. Robert Morgan.
You may be muted in East Peoria.
Not showing it.
No.
It's Robert. We know it's Robert.
Make sure it's not us here.
We're just working with the technology a little bit. Hold on one second. Should I move on to the other?
Let's wait and see if you can fix
Okay.
it.
I have a quick question. So do I do public
No.
comment after that?
Would be very loud.
So I go through the whole thing with public comment.
Guests in East Peoria.
Robert Morgan.
There we go.
Okay, great.
You got me now?
It's in Galesburg? Yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Do we have
That's
any
okay.
guests in Galesburg? Doesn't look like it. Guests at the Illinois State Library?
Hi, this is Kieran Egan from the State Library.
And it's Gwen Harrison from the State Library as well.
Thank you. And guests at Monmouth College?
No guests.
Okay. All right, we will do public comments. Do we have any public comments in Burr Ridge? East Peoria?
No.
Galesburg? No, they're not there. Illinois State Library? Or Monmouth?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to amend the agenda so that the attendees from LASA, agenda item 8.4, and I'm not sure I'm saying this right, Sikich,
Yes.
agenda item 8.2, are moved to present after the approval of the expenditures.
So moved. Second.
So it was moved by Scott and second by Dave. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, approval of Rails Board minutes and financial reports and expenditures. May I have a motion for approval of minutes of the August 24th, 2018 Rails Board meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Go ahead. So that was moved by Paul and seconded by Nadia. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next up, we have the Rails financial report. Jim, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
In your board package is a Rails financial report for the month of August 2018. Not much has happened so far this year. We're only 2 months into the fiscal year. Our August 31st general fund cash balance was $10.4 million, which would fund an estimated 10.7 months of operations. We are still owed $6,328,518 of the fiscal year 18 area and per capita grant, so we have a very large receivable on our books, and this would fund an additional 6.5 months of operations. There are indications, there are movements towards getting this paid in hopefully the near future. Our revenues thus far this year are $1 million, a little over $1.5 million under budget due to non-receipt of any area and per capita grant revenues. And our expenditures are $205,000 below budget. Most of this is due to lower contractual expenditures, as we had budgeted a large amount to over $600,000 to be awarding for LSAT membership grants. The indications are we are not going to spend this amount. There will be some spending, but we'll be significantly under budget on this. The remainder is primarily personnel costs due to delayed hiring of a few vacant positions. Our capital funds expenditures, we had our first expenditures for the month for the tuck pointing project, just under $30,000. We paid the remainder of that in September. We also have received 4 vehicles that we paid for in September also, on our very sorely needed vehicles, by the way, 4 vans. And I answer any questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, may I have a motion? Oh, sorry, Dave.
Jim, I have a question, or kind of like, I'm very happy with the report, and I'm glad to see how things are coming along. What I've been concerned, the last number of years, we've been operating on a shoestring with everything that's been going on in Springfield, the lack of budgets. Would it be possible to get a report showing how much of the monies that have come out of our own pockets to subsidize Rails operations?
In other words,
It's basically what our, it's pretty much what our general fund deficits have been over the past several years.
Right, but if you could have a report to that effect, kind of like.
We had very significant deficits in the 2 years that we had no budget. So yes, I could do something like that.
Thank you.
great.
At one time, we had a cash balance that would fund nearly 30 months of operations, and now we're down to under a year.
Exactly.
That difference is pretty much what that gap in funding has been.
Okay.
And
Thank
that-
you.
I can quantify that.
And
Thank you
that-
very much.
Sure.
And that's as a result of the cash flow difficulties. And some of that money we will never get back. It's interesting, we were just saying that yesterday, Paul. You said that very thing. So I think it would be, and a lot of that money was realized from the sale of real estate.
Exactly.
Great question.
Any other questions related to the financial report?
I just, does that have any bearing, the financial difficulty of the state and us getting money, does that have any bearing on how we plan? Are we more cautious now than before, knowing that we may not be out of the boat yet, out of the water yet?
We may always be going back and forth into the woods and out again. This is kind of the way I look at it. Yeah. I mean, you still have to keep providing service. I mean, that is something that, yes, we look at that
Do
every
we look at
year.
alternative ways to generate revenue?
No.
We don't do that.
No.
It's just that the-
I mean, how could we possibly generate $10 million? You know, it's.
Thank you.
I mean, not to be negative, but it's, you know, it's kind of
Or a
just,
portion thereof.
yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Another committee.
Sure. A committee to write grants and to write checks, right?
Anything else? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the financial report for August 2018?
Second.
So it was moved by Michael, second by Jay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, Jim, expenditures.
At the end of the financial report is a listing of our monthly expenditures for the month of August. They total $816,448.58. It's pretty much a normal or slightly below normal month of spending. Any questions on anything individual?
Okay, seeing no questions, may I have a motion for the approval of the expenditures for August 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I think it was moved by Scott, second by Dave. Okay, all in favor? No, Emily, will you please call the roll?
Christine Barr.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Casper.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Nadia Shake.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons. Did you say yes?
Yes.
Tom Stagg.
Yes.
Laura Turner.
Yes.
I don't think you called me. This is Dee Runnels.
Oh, hi Dee.
Dee Runnels.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, now we're going to move to agenda item 8.4, which is the report from the Laboratory for Applied Spatial Analysis.
Yes, so I'll just say a few introductory words, if that's okay. These are our Zach and Josh, all the way from Edwardsville. I put on your agenda that Dr. Pearson would be here, but also known as Randy, but he is busy.
Yes.
Actually, Jay, to reference your question, one of the reasons that we commissioned this study was so that because we knew we had to plan differently about delivery, because it's taking up such a huge portion of our budget. And so one of the ways that they're helping us is to figure out how to do that more efficiently and hopefully inexpensively. And that is also true of the sort of a corollary issue, which is how we fund the consortia and the LSAT. So, but this is about delivery. So I think I'll just let you take it away, Zach, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
All right, you want to come up here, or
Wherever you want me.
why don't you come up here, because
Okay.
wherever you want to be.
I'll be up here.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so I'm going to step everybody through the delivery analysis that we did. The Rails, I got in contact with Mark, I think it was last October already, that we got into contact and went through looking at various different things in terms of delivery and what could be done. So, the project went through 3 phases. The first phase is that we created a spatial database. We then created the current routes that are done right now digitally. And then we started answering what-if questions that we received from Rails. So the first phase, spatial database creation. What you are seeing on those gray dots are all the libraries in your service area that we received from you. The green dots that are a little bit harder to see there are the hubs. This database contains 1,495 locations, and it's data from L2, volume spreadsheets, and then any other data that got tied in along the way. At the bottom, you see an example of what the data looks like. It has your agency name, various other things that are tied into all those data sets in one place, and we can see it spatially. Benefits of this, it's easy to query. The software we use, it being in one spot, we can query data very easily. We can generate statistics by an attribute or by location. We can look at statistics temporally, see how things are changing over time, optimizing service areas, and basic mapping. So as an example of basic mapping, these are the L2 service areas based off of what's currently being done. they are color-coded by the hub that services those libraries. So red is Cole Valley, green is East Peoria, that pinkish purple color is in Bolingbrook, blue is Rockford. Just a simple way to see things on a map. We can look at average daily volume. So I was able to obtain volume data, and from that we can work it down to an average daily volume of what that library sees, and we can start to see patterns, a lack of a pattern, whatever might be in the data. We can start to see it spatially. Maybe give us some insights we previously didn't know, or confirm ideas that we already did know. Phase 2, creation of your current routes. These are what routes look like in our software, and what the software is doing is simply taking what is currently being done and we force feed it the routes so that we can get some kind of statistics on what's happening. Because what our computer estimates is not what happens in reality. It can't be made to be perfect like that, so we wanted a comparison piece. This phase was so that any what-if questions that we get asked, we can compare back to a better version of reality. And that was done to get this table. So these are all the statistics for the routes coming out of each hub. You have Cole Valley, East Peoria, Rockford, Bolingbrook, and we added in Chicago. We have the length of the route, the time of the route, how many stops you're taking, the break time for those routes. Everything goes into that, and we tie an estimated cost in at the end. And the numbers you're seeing when you're looking at these are annual numbers. We calculate everything up to an annual cost. And you'll see that as we go through and look at other tables. So phase 3, we started answering what-if questions. And we had 3 main questions we were looking at. Shuttling and exchanging materials between Rails and IHLS, looking at the optimum locations for hubs, and then routing without LSAT boundaries. And that had 3 different options. We had in-house deliveries with current outsourcing, all delivery insourced, and then a 3-hub option that had in-house deliveries and current outsourcing to see how things might change if we change boundaries a little bit in terms of delivery. So first up, the shuttling and exchanging materials between Rails and IHLS. We ran 2 analyses to find the best transfer hub. We used current hubs as an option in every city in Illinois to see what the best option would be for hubs. We then created routes from the current hubs to the transfer hub to calculate different statistics to see how things might change, and we did an estimated cost analysis. So the transfer hub options. I know some of this text is very hard to see. The 2 hubs are East Peoria, if you did current hubs, or Bloomington. They're both generally in the middle of the state, and it made sense in terms of our route distance and time. So, routing. These are the routes for the current transfer hub analysis using the method that's done now. Every route color you see is a different route. So you have the gray up top is the routes from Bolingbrook and all the shuttles before Bolingbrook comes down to Champaign. So for with East Peoria, Edwardsville, Carbondale. The numbers you see are for Rails only here. You have annual miles, annual hours, and then an estimated annual cost. We then started to see how we could route differently using different options. So we said, what if everybody just went to Champaign? And you see some numbers change mildly in reducing miles, hours, and cost if I go back and forth. We then said, what if Bolingbrook went to Champaign, did routing a little different? It would run up to Bensenville, do its thing. We see costs going down a little bit more. And then we said, what if Bolingbrook, everybody went to East Peoria, Bolingbrook did its thing with Bensenville, and we saw costs go down much more. This is a graph to kind of show everything comparatively. The bar graph on your left is the current method. The blue bar is everything totaled. Red is Rails and green is IHLS. And it shows how things change. The main thing we are looking at is that blue bar. The red and green bar are there just as extra information. Nothing we did had any concern about each zone individually. We are looking at that big blue bar to bring the total number down. This is annual miles. The current method shows roughly 492,000 miles. And if we go down to going to East Peoria, that number goes down to about 459,000. Hours follows the same trend. Almost nearly 10,000 hours total. It goes down to about 9,200 going to East Peoria. And costs follow the same trend. Our cost is based off miles driven, time worked, cost to keep the vehicles running. So it's gonna run in line with the same trend from left to right, going down a little bit at a time. We estimate an annual cost of roughly $413,000. Currently, if we went to East Peoria routing different ways, that goes down to about $385,000 annually. So now, on to optimum locations for hubs. So first and foremost, we're looking at in-house deliveries with current outsourcing. So that results in 4 hubs. The 4 hubs that the software thinks using the data are Mount Sterling, Peoria, Linden, Northeast Naperville. Mount Sterling is not near any of the current hubs. For the other ones, I put how close they were. You can see that Peoria is only about 4 miles from its current hub, and so on when you're looking at the other hubs. This is what the service areas would be. You have your Mount Sterling in the bottom left, your Peoria in the bottom middle, and then you have your Northeast Naperville up top, and then Linden on the other side. That is the effective service areas that the data that we're provided, the software we use, says is most optimal. That's how they chain.
Can you say more about why the Mount Sterling one came up?
Yes.
In terms of the distance out there?
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. So
East Peoria.
we noticed when we're routing, and every time we ran these options, it was always picking Mount Sterling. And a lot of that is due to the distance East Peoria has to currently cover. So if we went back to the volume map, bear with me for just a second, you will notice East Peoria zone is not heavily impacted by volume. A lot of small gray dots out there, not a lot of volume. There's a lot of geography. There's a lot of road miles. And so even if their trucks are not full, say like Bolingbrook, they have to drive a long way to get those 3, 4, 5 libraries serviced. So every time we were running Optimum, the software with the data that we had was saying you had to have a hub servicing about 50 or so libraries, and that would reduce the workload on East Peoria and overall optimize what's going on in the zone. It had everything to do with the drive time in East Peoria. Lots of drive time. This one is just showing how hubs move, just to show that green dot down in Mount Sterling, the Rockford's not in its current spot, how it changes in Bolingbrook, and so on. Then we looked at if all delivery was insourced. So now we have a 5th hub. The 5 hubs are East Peoria, Eastern Kelowna, it picked Mount Sterling again, Southeastern Rockford, and Oak Brook. The one thing I do want to stress here are the positions of your current hubs are very close to what they say are optimum. We're only talking at sometimes 15 miles at most in difference. This is your effective service areas. Again, even bringing in a 5th hub to service all the other libraries, we're still having a service area down in Mount Sterling. That drive distance, no matter what's going on, is a massive impact on East Peoria. It is always trying to correct for that. And this is how your hubs change. I do want to stress Rockford and East Peoria, they're pretty much on top of each other. Even the one in Coal Valley is close. The one for Bolingbrook in this area is in between Bensonville and Bolingbrook, and we have our Mount Sterling sitting down there in the southwest. So now we were routing without LSAT boundaries. So we decided to form these lines you see going out are the effective service areas. These are the libraries each hub is servicing. So we said, what if we routed based on analytical routing boundaries, not using LSAT boundaries? Well, first and foremost, I tried to do the routing with no boundaries at all to see how it would work, and that did not work well at all. We had trucks from Coal Valley from Bolingbrook going to Coal Valley, and things were just messy. We found out that it was doing that because of East Peoria's tension with its time. Coal Valley was going down to help East Peoria, so Bolingbrook had to go help Coal Valley, and it caused this domino effect that was not good. So we started using those analytical boundaries based off these lines. When I'm talking about analytical boundaries, we're talking about what the software said was the best option in terms of route time. We were trying to reduce the amount of time that delivery vehicles are on the road. That is how these analytical boundaries, when I say that, that is what I'm talking about. So we did that with in-house deliveries with current outsourcing, all delivery in-sourced, and then we did a 3-hub option. And the 3-hub option is going to assume that current outsourcing continues. So first up, the routing with in-house deliveries, current outsourcing. You now see in color the different routing zones. East Peoria's in green, Cole Valley's in purple, Rockford's in that red, Bolingbrook's in the blue. The table on the left is the service area. Service areas are the number of libraries being served. So currently, that current SA, current service area, Bolingbrook services 162 libraries, Cole Valley services 49, East Peoria at 191, Rockford at 80. On the right column, you see what happens if we change to the analytical delivery boundaries. Bolingbrook now services 160. Cole Valley goes up and almost doubles. It is helping East Peoria. Cole Valley does not come that far south currently. It is helping East Peoria because East Peoria, due to time of routing, is highly stressed. East Peoria goes down from 191 to 149. Rockford picks up 5 extra libraries in this option. I'm not showing every individual route. They look the same as what I showed you for those current routes. They're just lines on a map. What's important is their length, time, and their cost. So if we did all delivery in-sourced, you see in the red in the top right corner, Bensonville comes back into play. That's why its current service area is pretty much 0. Your total library served goes up from 482 to 617. Other than Bolingbrook and Bensonville changing, everything else kind of stays the status quo. Cole Valley is almost doubling. East Peoria goes down to 149. Rockford picks up a handful more of libraries. Then we ran a 3-hub option. So of the 3 current hubs, if we're going to do current outsourcing, what 3 hubs stay? That would be Bolingbrook, East Peoria, Rockford. And you will notice that Rockford and East Peoria pick up the work where Cole Valley was. Heavily in favor of East Peoria. That distance, they actually go into Cole Valley itself. And just a quick service area overview to show how things change next to each other. So you have your current service area, you have your in-house delivery, the 3-hub option, then everything in-source, just to see how things change. It pretty much consistently causes Cole Valley to double in terms of libraries served, and depending on what's happening in East Peoria, it's either going down because it's getting its help, or it goes back up because it's the 3rd hub in the 3-hub option. So variables in each routing scenario. The goal was to make these routes as real as possible, and I stress that they're not perfect, so we can only estimate a lot of these things. So the max total time for each route was 9 hours. The computer would not service anything if it had to go over 9 hours. It would stop. It would give me an error, what have you. So no route is longer than 9 hours, and we're given an average service time of 10.5 minutes per library. So the computer works in a way where it'll go up to the library, and it'll wait there and add 10.5 minutes to the total cost. That's in the 9 hours. All right, that's included in the total 9. The break time is 1 hour, so it takes in any breaks the driver may need, what they're allowed to have. And we have a vehicle capacity of 52.5 containers. I'll get into vehicle capacity a little bit later, but we took another average to get an idea of how much volume affects different routes. Because it's a big difference in Bolingbrook compared to other areas, so having capacity and volume were huge. The volume is calculated down to a daily average number of containers. Since we are modeling a system, we cannot have exact daily numbers, so we are using averages to get an idea of what's going on. So, results. So, the left column is your current routing. Again, the main thing is that big blue bar. We broke things down by service area. Bensonville will be in red, Bolingbrook's in green, Cole Valley's in purple. The light blue is East Peoria, the orange is Rockford. But again, we are mainly looking at big blue bar, the total. How does the total come down in terms of distance? These are annual miles. The current routing that we put in says that it's just over 1 million. You can see how that changes depending on what you do. The 3-hub option, just under 1 million. I apologize that the numbers can be hard to read. You see the same pattern in time. These are total hours in a year. Again, you're at about just over 42,000 total hours of routing. And as you see, if you went to in-house deliveries with current outsourcing with that analytical boundary, you're down to just under 38,000. and you're about 39 something in the 3 hub option. So you see the hours coming down, which means costs will come down. Estimated currently it's about 1.1 million to route. Again, it's an estimate, most likely an overestimate, and it goes down to just over $1 million at the 3 hub option, and you see how things change in between. It of course goes up if all delivery is insourced. And then moving forward, so something that my boss, Dr. Pearson, has talked about from the get-go is continuing things to keep things fresh. First and foremost, the idea of creating a website to where Rails can access the spatial database, conduct their own queries, maybe their own analyses in some way. Maybe one of the most important is data cleaning and updating. There was a lot of effort on this project was in getting the data ready to be used. So if that were to fall behind and get back to the state it was, it would be a very long process again if any more questions came up or any new data wanted to be added to the database. And then just different routing options, routing from Optimum hubs. A big thing with the volume was incorporating box truck volumes, having a more detailed route volume so we could see how much adding box trucks could impact things. And then the ability just to answer any questions that can come up at any given time. Having that spatial database ready to look at. If Mark wants to call me and say, hey, what about this? We're capable and ready to answer any given question. And that is my presentation. I know it was fast. I have no problem answering any questions. So thank you.
Just some clarifications on costs. So I know the costs by design do not include facility costs, so we just need to be clear on that. And then also you alluded to the fact that the costs also were standardized versus actual Rails and Heartland costs. So could you elaborate on that a little bit more about what sources you used?
Yeah, so the cost is developed through a few things. So we take the amount of time that's being used to drive, using the knowledge Mark gave me on how much pay is for the drivers. And then for the vehicles, we use the distance, and we used a website called Edmunds.com. They do a true cost to own. And Mark gave me information on the vehicles that are used here, and we found an average cost to own of a vehicle for a year and what it would cost to operate gas, fuel, etc., maintenance, everything. And we use the mileage driven. That's how Edmunds calculates it. And we do a simple calculation on how much that route would cost in terms of the vehicle. We add that with what the driver costs in terms of the hours they have to work, and that gives us the estimate. Of course, it is going to be a rough estimate. And in terms of when we worked with Heartland, it was sometimes a gross overestimate. Because we don't have every vehicle down to the detail, so there's going to be overestimates, underestimates in areas. It's to get into the ballpark of an idea of how things might shift. It's not, the costs aren't to be taken literally as that's what it costs now, and that's what it'll cost if we change it. The costs will fluctuate. Even the route distance and time can fluctuate. We're using roads that have a specific setup to where it's going to use the fastest road possible in terms of speed limit. That does not take into account any driver knowledge of their route that we do not have. If they know of shortcuts, if they know of something else, different traffic patterns that happen. We can't account for every single variable that happens on the road. That is why it's an estimate. That answer the question?
Yes, thank
Good.
you.
Awesome.
So maybe just a couple things as background to, or as, why we're doing this, why we did this now, other than just to try to find ways to save money. So we, in partnership with Heartland, are currently providing the Illinois Library Delivery System, ILDS, which serves all of the academic libraries that are in Carly. So in addition to our regular Rails routes, we are also going, that's what the transferring between Rails and Heartland is mostly about, not entirely. But so that contract is up next May, and we're looking to make some changes to that in any way that we can to lower our costs. and even to sort of recalibrate so that it's more equal, if possible, between us and Heartland. The other exciting challenge we face with all of this is that we don't know what our future in the East Peoria building is. The lease will be up. We have recently learned that we'll be able to do a month-to-month lease, but we need a long-term stable location, and particularly if East Peoria were to become the transfer hub, we don't know that it's possible to do that work there. We also don't know that it is possible to make the in fact, we believe it is not possible to enlarge the Coal Valley building to be able to take on additional libraries. So if it wasn't complicated enough, that helps to make it even more complicated and interesting. Did I leave anything out that?
I think those were the key things, yeah.
So we met in August with Heartland and at the State Library, and Zach and Josh and Dr. Pearson were there to present this study in somewhat greater detail to the State Library and to Heartland. And at that meeting, it was agreed that the next step should be that Heartland should also get their data to LASA so that they can update. LASA has done work with Heartland too, which was very helpful to them, I know. So nobody's a stranger here. But they needed, as I understood it, to update the data or complete the data or something so that they could make a similar analysis of Heartland. Also with the idea that maybe we need to look at, in some cases, changing the delivery, the system delivery, so that it might make more sense for libraries that are along the system borders to not be delivered by the Rails hub closest to them if there's a Heartland hub that's closer, so to, in that sense, to look beyond the boundaries. So that's the next step. And as I understand it, and as Greg has explained it to me again, actually, and as I say, the clock is really ticking on this because we have to figure out what to do about our buildings, and we have to be able to figure out what to do about the contracts that we have or agreements that we have with Carly. So in that, we really need to be able to make a decision, I would say, by March or April, right? Which isn't that far away. So I don't know what the status of the next phase is. Could you reassure us about that?
I don't know if it's going to be the best reassurance. I am unaware of the next phase. That is in talks, I would say, is the best way to put it.
Okay.
It is in talks.
Okay. Well, we'll have to find out more about that, I guess. Okay, so I just wanted to give you all that additional background because I think it, I didn't want you to think, oh, this is interesting, but it's really interesting and important. I see Paul is poised.
But this is an easy question. Just as a reminder, could you give us like a 60-second, 120-second reminder of what LASA is?
So LASA is the library, Light Spatial Analysis, and we do anything and everything in terms of analyzing spatial issues. So this is one of them. We work with Heartland on what they call the functional 5-day-a-week service. One of the main contracts that I've been working on for years is mapping underground coal mines in Illinois. My colleague Josh and my boss Randy, they work with agriculture farms, analyzing them. So anything and everything that has a spatial component, we work on.
Is LASA, is this a mixed academic program as well? Is this how is this?
It's more of a professional center that takes on undergrad and graduate students to help with the workload to give students on campus professional experience before entering the workforce. So it's a mix of professional work, getting things done for the industry, and also helping students out so that they have kind of like an internship program as well.
Excellent. So is it a freestanding organization or is it?
No, it's part of SIUE.
Okay.
Yeah, we're part of the school.
Okay.
They did some really interesting work with school districts on school bus routing. And also on a work for the university, if you don't mind if I just jump in on how
Go
great
ahead.
you are.
Be my guest.
They did some really interesting work looking at where incoming students are from to, SIUE to, as a recruiting tool, and it's fascinating stuff.
I would just like to say thank you. This was a great report and first step, obviously, more to come, but also I'm really, very proud that this came out of the public university system of Illinois. That is tremendously cool.
Great. Well, we appreciate you guys having us up here. It's awesome. Thank you.
Dee, is it possible that we can get a copy of this presentation?
Is this we were a little confused, is it a paid consultant thing, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Yep, but very reasonable.
That's above my pay grade.
Mine too.
Yeah. Yes, we're happy to provide the printouts of the PowerPoint.
Excellent.
So you'll be hearing more as we move forward, but we just wanted you to be very aware of what's going on and that there will be important decisions to be made.
If I may, I'd also just like to thank Bea and Jane and Mark and everyone else on the team for doing this. This is a very thoughtful analysis that's been undertaken, and I very much appreciate it.
Very interesting.
Do we have any questions or comments from our sites? Nope. Okay, we're going to move on to 8.2, which is the audit presentation. Jim and Dan?
I'll start off. We have completed, Sikich has completed its audit of our fiscal year 2018 financial statements, which are included in your board materials. They're in finals. Well, they've been issued. They are final stage, not even draft. The audit went very smoothly, and I have Dan Berg, the partner from Sikich, who has been on our audit for the last several years, well, since the inception of Rails. So if you could go ahead and give a few highlights.
Absolutely. What I've done at many of your libraries that she's heard it all before. Yeah. Just the numbers are different. Is to literally walk you through the report so it makes it easier for me to highlight things, but in case you are intimidated by the size of the report and the length of the notes of the financial statements, I can point out what, as an auditor, I feel are the most important pages. Is that something you'd be interested in, or should I just give you a higher level? Get some nod. So I'll go ahead and it goes pretty quickly. So on page 2 of the report, on page 1 and 2 and 3, the opinion, this is the only pages of the report, these are the only pages of the report that are truly ours. The rest of the report is actually a representation of management, either pulled from the records or in the case of the MD&A, written by management. So the paragraph that's most important is at the very top of page 2, where it states, it's under the header opinions, and it states that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. That's what's commonly referred to as a clean opinion. We call it an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of assurance we're allowed to give. Okay, so that's what you pay us for, that paragraph. There's a couple other things too, but I'll get to those. So immediately following that, but before the financial statements themselves, is the management discussion and analysis. I strongly recommend, if you haven't read this yet, to go ahead and read it. It allows management to compare this year to last year, and in this case, it actually tells you the reasons why the numbers changed from one year to the other, and gives you a little hint of what's to come in the future. So it gives management the ability to explain the numbers. It's the only place in the financial statements that that's possible and done. So again, strongly recommend that. We go back to normally page numbering. We number the opinion 1, 2, 3, and then we stop numbering and number the MD&A 1 through whatever. It's to make it easier to issue the report because we're never sure how long the MD&A will be, and we don't want to change the page numbering after we issue the draft. So on page 4 is the full accrual balance sheet, if you will. We call it the statement of net position of the organization. By full accrual, I mean at the top of the page, at the end of the asset section, it has the capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation, a little over $2 million in total. Then we also pull in the IMRF, the effects of the IMRF, and you're one of a growing number of organizations that we audit that actually have a net pension asset. The third to the last asset shown is a $6.2 million asset. That's how much extra money the organization has accumulated as of 12/31/2017 at IMRF, completely inaccessible. You can't touch it. They're sitting on it for you. Thank you. But basically, because of the way the organization pulled together all of the employees at the former library systems, and so many of them retired at that time, that you indeed have an actuarial asset. Again, inaccessible. So we also have in the long-term liabilities, vacations payable and other post-employment benefit liability that we're required to pick up this year for the first time under Government Accounting Standards Board Statement 75. So we had to have a new, if you're a member of a public library, you'll have to, as of June 30, have an actuarial report, at least to set a baseline. Interestingly enough, that liability started the year at $72,000 about and dropped to $42,000 at the end of the year. So it's virtually immaterial to this organization, but at some of my other libraries, it's actually material. So down at the bottom of the page is the equity. And we try to display that in the order you can't spend it, to tell the reader that, yeah, we have $25 million, almost $26 million in equity, but of that equity, $2.1 million is completely inaccessible. That's your value of your physical plant and vehicles, okay? Net of accumulated depreciation. The second number, $2.7 million, is the net effect of IMRF. Remember I said you had $6 million? Well, we also had some deferred items that dropped that number down a bit because December 31st, 2017 was a spectacular year to close your year in for investments. IMRF at over 13% as a rate of return. So as an actuarial report goes, you don't want to recognize that windfall in one year. You want to defer it over time. And that's why we have a large deferred inflow of resources in the IMRF pension-related items of $5.2 million. So that kind of nets it up. And then the last one, the $20 million, is the unrestricted on a full accrual basis. That's what's available to the organization to spend. Okay. So flipping over to the following page is the statement of activities. That's the full accrual page that includes depreciation on your capital assets and all the effects of OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and IMRF. And it shows that at near the bottom of the page, change in net position, positive $325,000. Okay, on a $12 million in total expenses, a little better than break even, obviously, but not a huge number. Okay. We also show the beginning effect of that implementation of GASB 75 as a 76, I said 72, $76,000 OPEB number, okay? Flipping over to page 6, that's your balance sheet on a modified accrual basis, much more close to the budgetary basis. And again, look at the bottom of the page, about $200,000 in prepaid items, money you've already spent, so you can't spend it again. The assigned for special projects in the capital projects column, almost $3 million. So that's money that has been set aside over time only for capital projects. It's assigned, so that means the board and management has designated it as such, but it could, in dire need, be moved back because it's assigned, not restricted. Hopefully, we won't ever have to do that, and it's there for the usage for capital down the road. But we do have $11.5 million in spendable fund balance, okay? I also wanted to point out that there's a due from governments in the general fund of $6.3 million. That's offset by unavailable grant revenue. That money was not delivered to Rails within the standard 60 or 90 days, coming up on 90 now. Still haven't seen it, so while it's receivable as part of your area per capita grant from the prior year, it hasn't come in time on a modified accrual basis to warrant us recognize it in its revenue. Okay, and that's one of the reasons for the dramatic difference between the 11 million and the 20 million of spendable net position versus fund balance, if that makes sense. Okay. And the last page I want to talk about very quickly is on page 8, which shows the increases and decreases in fund balance for the general, grant, and capital project. That grant column used to be much bigger when you had the Talking Books program, sorry. But now we get virtually much smaller dollars. But toward the bottom of the page, net changes in fund balance, we had about $1.2 million deficit spending this year. That sort of answers your question, Director Berry, about are we better off or how much are we deficit spending? Almost $2 million for this fiscal year. Dipping into your pocket, as you were saying.
And I might add, you might remember, we had a small increase in our statement of net position, and that was because of the change in the pension asset offsetting the decrease in the government in the general fund balance.
Correct. Or
the governmental fund balances.
Correct. The only other page was the page 29, the budget and actual page for the general fund that I wanted to point out. We had $12.5 million budgeted for revenue and only $10 million. Virtually all of that is due to the delay in receipt of the per capita grant, and had budgeted an increase of fund balance of $300,000, but again, due to that per capita issue, a almost $2 million deficit. So the difference between the state budget and actual is $2.3 million, but due to spending constraints by management, that was mitigated quite a bit in the loss. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this document, the financial statements. We have 2 more documents that will be very quick to go through, but I just wanted to see if you had any questions on this. Okay. Please let Jim know if you found that beneficial, or if you'd rather me go faster. The other 2 documents are extraordinarily thin. We have the auditor's communication to the board of directors. This is where we tell you if we had any problems during the course of the audit. No's are good in this. No disagreements with management, no issues, okay? We also are required to report to the board any adjusting journal entries. You won't find them in here. We had no adjusting journal entries during this audit. Congratulations to Jim, Bill Getz, and Sharon Swanson. Outstanding job. That's basically a rarity in governmental accounting and auditing, so congratulations.
I made the comment at a board meeting in Coal Valley last year that was our goal, and we met it.
Awesome. Good job.
No adjusting entries.
Yeah, very cool. It's only guys like Jim and I get excited. The last piece of it would be any recommendations that we found of in a material weakness or significant deficiency. You won't find them in here. That's another reason this document is so thin. We hit material weakness, if I might remind you, is error in the design or lack of design and internal controls, and error in the execution, or just error in posting to the financial statements that could cause a material error in your financial statements. Significant deficiency, same thing, just a little lower dollar amount than material. We found none of those. As we go through the audit, we might come up with an idea or two along the way. None of those rose to those levels or needed to be reported to the board. So again, congratulations. The last document is the single audit report. It's required because the state adds to its funds federal money and then reports to the system that of the money it gave you, about almost $2 million originated from federal money. So we go through what's called a single audit, which entails testing compliance with the laws and regulations that over those federal funds. No findings. Congratulations. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process or the work product you have in front of you. And again, I'd like to thank Jim, Bill, and Sharon for outstanding work preparing for us. We're able to get through the audit in a very timely manner and get these documents to the board. We used to bring these to the board in draft form and then issue them in final. A lot of that was because we couldn't get them done quite in time, just because of all the issues that we had. Last couple of years, we've had no issues. And it wasn't issues with staff or the numbers. It had to do with the actuarial numbers, the implementation of new GASBs, things like that. Thank you. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Congratulations to Jim and his team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good job.
Absolutely.
So I have a question.
Yes, Sue.
Oh, certainly.
You send us out a form.
Yes, we do.
Are those usually answered to your satisfaction?
Yes.
I'm always kind of not sure if I do or not.
And the idea behind those forms is to give you the opportunity, if you suspect anything going on, to let us know what direction we need to go in our audit. If there's any areas that the board considers to be a weakness, and we do this with all the department heads here and all of the accounting staff as well. Is there any areas that we need to focus on as auditors? So that gives you that opportunity to either talk to us directly or simply fill out the form. We look at those immediately. Hopefully we get those before we come out in field work, for field work, and ascertain what audit procedures we need to expand or contract based on suspicions or reported fraud. They were pretty bland. We didn't really get any direction from board members to change our audit procedures. Hope that reassures the board.
Just say these numbers.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, did we have any questions on video? Okay, then, may I have a motion to accept the annual audit for fiscal year 2018?
So moved.
A second.
Moved by Jay, second by Nadia. Emily, will you call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Dee Runnels.
Yes.
Nadia Sheikh.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons. Yes. Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
And Laura Turner.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, we are going to reports, which I believe is number 7? Okay, we're at 7.1. So we have a report from the Rails president. I do not have a report. So we will move on to Rails board committee reports. 7.2, the Consortia Committee. Paul, do you have a report?
Not at this time, ma'am, although the committee will be meeting 2 weeks from Monday.
Okay. The Executive Committee has not met, so we will move to Policy Committee.
Once again, ma'am, I have no report.
Okay. A lot of reports have no reports. And the Resource Sharing Committee. Jane?
I do have a report.
All right.
The Resource Sharing Committee met on September 10th, and we had a great discussion. with 2 representatives from NILROC, which is the Network of Illinois Learning Resources in Community Colleges. NILROC was represented by Ashton Trimble, who's at Blackhawk College, and Tara Jacobson from Moraine Valley. So we learned more about how their libraries serve both reciprocal borrowers and unserved residents in their community college district. It also revealed the need to do a further study to further clarify what community colleges do to serve unserved residents, unserved people in their community college district. So we had hoped to go to the NILROC meeting, which was yesterday and today. They were not able to fit anybody else into the agenda, but we have been invited to the May meeting. So in the meantime, we will be looking at ways to gather further information from community colleges. Also, the committee approved the revised resource sharing plan and recommended it to the board. We are planning to bring that to you next month. That revised plan reflects changes prompted by the change in administrative code. So you'll see that next month.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jane. We will move to 7.3 Rails reports, and we have the Rails monthly report from Dee.
Yes, thank you. So yes, you have our written report. I guess I would highlight that ILA is coming very soon, and I know that some of you are planning to attend, which is great. There will be some Rails activities there, including a reception on Tuesday.
Tuesday, right, 5 to
Yep.
6:30. Your Marquette Hotel.
Yep.
Everybody's invited.
Yep. It's in conjunction with Autographics, is that right?
Yeah, it is in conjunction with Find More Illinois, but there's
Find
not
More
going to be a
Illinois,
formal presentation.
Right.
It'll just be a chance for everybody to network. And the Autographics will be there to demo Find More Illinois, like if anyone wants to see it, but there will be no formal program.
Right. As I said in my report, we have been busily visiting members. There's been some issues at both Calumet Park and Harvey. We're attempting to help them with training their board and getting their policies and bylaws in place, those kinds of things. And we are going to be continuing our discussion in this meeting about the whole issue of a board engagement and committees later on in the agenda. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Okay, hearing no questions, we will move on to the Rails Service of the Month report, a 5-minute report from Mark.
Well done. Unfortunately.
Oh, he's not
Mark
here.
is
Boy.
MIA.
No report. He missed my joke.
I get to tell him.
He's still bonding with his three peeps. What do you want to do, Jane? Do you want to go find him, or do you want us to keep going?
Jim will go find him.
Okay. Why don't we hear from the State Library?
Yeah.
at time?
Let's
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, let's talk to the chamber.
Oh, he's back.
They're all back. Right. Okay, sorry, Karen and Gwen. Hold on one sec here.
I assume this is the delivery section?
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
It's your report, your monthly delivery report.
Oh, great, okay, my apologies. Just,
Sorry, but you lost a minute.
I lost a minute?
You're down to 4.
Kidding.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes just to give you guys a quick overview of the delivery operation.
The delivery operation is actually run with 5 managers and 3 delivery leads, and I'll introduce Robert. He's the only one that didn't jump ship. The other managers are gone. So Robert Morgan in East Peoria. He is our newest manager. So thank you for the support, Robert. We also have a staff of 53 drivers, sorters, and managers combined. We have a total of 53 within our operation, and we handle all the deliveries within the northern part of the state, within the 4 service centers of Bolingbrook, Coal Valley, East Peoria, and Rockford. We're a hybrid system of in-house and outsourced deliveries, as Lassa had just referenced. Our outsourced vendor, CTL, Continental Transport Solution, is located in Bensonville. And I won't go over the numbers again, but those were the averages in which we service and then what our vendor services. We're primarily a 24-hour operation within our Bolingbrook Service Center. We use the pod structure and parking for efficiencies. That structure consists of more like the lean methodology, to gain better efficiency and to reduce workers' comp claims. And I'll go in a little bit more into that. Each sort pod is structured in an L-shaped fashion for efficiency and to consolidate the workspace within a 10 by 10 work area. Each pod is also assigned a route. So let's say, for instance, Route 1, Route 2, Route 3, and so forth. With all of the libraries within that route are then in alphabetical order, which also expedite our sorting. Each vehicle that's assigned to the route is also parked literally right in front of the pod structure itself, which also reduces the number of steps that it takes in order to load and unload the vehicle. And you can see the actual pictures below that actually provide you how it's actually structured. As far as vehicles are concerned within our fleet, we have 51 vehicles in our fleet, and that's total within rails. 43 of those are assigned just to our delivery operation. We have a mixture of box trucks, vans, and transit vehicles. Those are the latest and the greatest that we've been purchasing, the Ford Transits. And as Zach from last reference, we do drive a million miles annually, which is 41 times around the world, to put it in perspective, Our volume, which is actually on the attachment, at the last attachment, for FY 18, we did 9.4 million items, and we processed that manually within our service centers. And also, just to share, within FY 17, we did 9.3 million items. So as far as our budget is 2.8, which is a nice large budget, and the item costs 31 cents an item, is what it actually translates to. I wanted to briefly talk about innovations, things that we're working on to try and gain additional efficiencies within the operation. Fine count automation, we currently have a fine count that's done 4 times a year. But unfortunately, it's a manual process as well. We're looking to automate that to where member libraries will actually enter the information directly into our system to eliminate trees, because we do ask them to put paper with the number of items inside of that container and send it in to us. So by having this done electronically, we would reduce the number of pieces of paper that are floating around. This pilot, what we're doing is we started with a small pilot of 41 libraries, and the first pilot, which was within our August fine count period, it went very well. We're looking to expand that slowly, so we're looking at expanding it to the Geneva service area. So the libraries within the Geneva area, we're going to ask them to now step up and participate in the pilot. And then as the fine counts actually progress, we will then continue to expand the pilot itself. As far as training videos, we created training videos primarily to assist with staffing within the libraries. And I'll just name the 6 different videos that were prepared. Preparing the material for delivery, that's putting it into the containers. Delivery support, which is our help desk. How to request carrier service, member lookup, and that's just searching within L2, ordering labels, and then also how to populate the labels. So those are the videos that we currently have available on our web delivery webpage. You know, special shout out to Joe Philippek, who's not here today. Another person that, you know, bailed on me.
Right,
Hey, there you are, Joe. Hey, so you didn't bail on me. Thank you.
Shot
Okay.
you behind your back, right in front of you.
Yeah, he's right in front of me, right behind my back. How about that? You know, so definitely, you know, Joe was actually our script writer. He moderated the whole thing. He did a fabulous job, and we also utilized the equipment at Fountaindale. So special thank you to Fountaindale, and then also Naperville Public Library, where we actually did a lot of the actual recording itself. You know, another great project is the use of tablets to collect our delivery data. We have a lot of papers that we want to eliminate as well. And this round, where we currently have a pre-trip inspection form, we have our driver sheet, we have our route books. Capturing all of that information inside of the tablet itself will simplify things. It also gives us a different ability to look at things historically. A lot of our information is very difficult for us to go back and extract, primarily because it's on paper and in boxes in the corner. By having that stuff within the tablet, it will simplify things. It'll make it a lot easier for us, you know, to be able to look at the data, you know, analyze the data as well. The ticketing system, which we already have in place, you know, the ticketing system is our support system where libraries can communicate directly with us if there's any problems, if there are any concerns. A lot of those tickets are primarily like notifications of missing items or damaged items, container requests, van on demand pickup, label orders, even compliments like Mark is great. Our goal is to respond back to those tickets within 24 hours. That's always our goal, to at least respond back. If we can't finalize the ticket, but at least have some type of communication back to the member within 24 hours. And then also, you know, I'm talking fast because I know my time is almost up. You know, vehicle tracking software. That's actually the project that we're currently working on right now, where it gives us the ability to see our vehicles in real time. We'll be actually have the ability to capture on-site times, the amount of time that the library is at the library, if that vehicle is speeding, which we don't do, notifications of when oil changes are due and things like that. It's a great system. So I'm looking forward to really working with that. I'm reading the manual right now to figure out all of the options and whatnot, you know. So it's a very inexpensive system. It's user-friendly. You know, our drivers hate it, so I love it. So I think that's a win-win. So I encourage you guys to actually look at our delivery webpage. There's a lot of things out there that we do. Our web, the email address is out there, right there for you guys to look at. Please take advantage of looking at a lot of things that we do within the delivery partner department. And I guess I'll thank you, and I open it up for if there's any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a contract right now in place with LASA, or is it
LASA?
Laboratory? I'm sorry, lab.
To do more work, you
Yeah.
mean?
Is it just up until
They've completed
Their
their
portion.
work with us, but that doesn't mean we can't contract with them again. They're theoretically, I believe, it was easier to work with them because we're all units of government.
Got it.
And so it's more like a scope of work that, you know, the two entities agree on, which is what is happening right now between Heartland and.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we were just talking about outside.
Right.
How to spear that along.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Mark, 31 cents per item to move it. What can I relate that to? Is that, you know, could it be 10 cents? Could it be 50 cents an item? How can I relate to 31 cents?
I'm not sure how I can break that down, but
Okay.
31 cents an item is actually pretty darn good, considering.
In
When you-
prior years, do you recollect what it might have been last year or the year prior?
Actually, our costs have gone up a little bit. In the prior years, we were at 29 cents an item. So over time, salaries go up, fuel goes up and things like that, so our overall costs, actually went up as well. So in this industry, it's kind of hard to relate it to something, so.
We do have the information from other states about what, we know in Massachusetts what it costs per item. We do, have that information if you'd be interested. Getting a little context is, sure.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So a few years back, I don't remember the year, but when gas was insane, it was approaching $4 a
Right.
gallon. Do you happen to do that calculation that year, and was it significantly higher per item?
I've been doing that for the last couple of years. So it's, what we've been trying to do is always gain additional efficiencies, is what we've been doing, to try and offset a lot of our costs. Like in this situation where we're looking at, working with LASA, we're hoping that we can impact some immediate changes, let's say 100,000, just throwing a number out there, we can reduce $100,000, from some of their recommendations, but that's going to then offset. But what I would have to go back to, I would refer back to Jim, because that's actually categorized separately within our P&Ls, and I could actually see exactly, where our costs were from in that category, for the fuel, from year to year to year and year, but I'm sure it probably.
Well, this last year, our fuel and our maintenance and repair costs both went up significantly.
Right.
One due to just pretty much the increase in fuel costs, but also some apparent effects of aging of our vehicles on miles per gallon. And then the other pretty much on the aging of the vehicles, which we're trying to replace now.
Why we just bought new vehicles. It's
Right.
definitely worth it.
Some of the mileage in the vehicles,
Unbelievable.
337,000 miles.
Insane.
Yeah.
And it runs like a charm too, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah.
Immediate.
But the delivery operation as a whole came in very, very close to budget. Very close despite those increases, both of those we had pretty much anticipated, but it was quite an increase versus the prior year.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where we're always trying to gain efficiencies, to offset things, so, and that's where we're hoping the recommendations from the LASA study is going to also save us tons of money as well, so because costs are continuing to go up, the more efficiencies we can build in, the better overall cost will be.
It would be kind of fascinating to know, and I could probably figure this out with a calculator given some time, but what percentage of the 31 cents is spent on staff salaries and benefits versus fuel versus buying and maintaining vehicles? That right then would be fascinating.
Yeah, and the good thing about how Jim does the P&L, because it is broken down by category. So I've got a personnel cost, I've got a vehicle cost, I've got, facility costs.
You can see the annual budget. It's part of the financial statements. I do a separate statement on delivery.
Oh, okay.
And the annual budget is on the far right side.
Okay.
So you can get an idea from that.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Mark, have any other Midwest states done a study similar, like with their library systems, or
The study as far as with LASA?
not LASA necessarily, but like these kind of spatial analysis for delivery hubs, and I'm just curious if anybody else has done a study like that.
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I know they're always looking for ways to gain better efficiencies.
Okay.
Like within Massachusetts, right before Greg retired, in Massachusetts, we would periodically talk about, ways to, reduce costs, and they were wondering how we were doing it so low.
Okay.
But I have not, to be honest with you, looked into if other neighboring systems has a system or looked into something like this. I have not, to be honest with you.
I do know that Wisconsin is in the process of re-examining all of their library system services, but in particular delivery. At the meeting with Wisconsin Library Services staff earlier this month, we talked about that, and theirs is much different. It's more of a spoke, most of it's coming out from Madison, so it's not as efficient as ours, frankly. So they're looking at redoing that, the way they do delivery as well.
There are also a lot of differences in how delivery is funded around the country. Some places, libraries pay for delivery.
Many places.
Many places.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting variables.
I just had one quick question. I was just wondering, I'm just relating to what we do. Do you guys ever look at anything besides driving the items? Because
you mean like drones?
No. Well, I mean, I kind of thought about that, but for us, because we have such a big, literally a global delivery area.
Yeah, sure.
We don't even use Caterpillar services for some of it. We'll just UPS to some of our really far, and then our really far stuff, we just buy them a copy. We don't even bother. I mean, honestly, we're not gonna
it's true.
ship
that makes sense.
because it's way cheaper to buy to either UPS it. I guess I was wondering, do you ever factor any of that into your total delivery? You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. We actually have several different methods of how we actually place delivery. We do have over 400 locations set up under mail.
Right, okay,
Because
so
it's
you
actually
do.
cheaper to
To
actually
do it
mail the
than-
item
than
versus have
drive.
a physical truck
Right.
go to that, location. So we utilize mail. We also will, for our smaller locations, we can set them up in what we call van on demand, where instead of us going to that location on a particular schedule, we only go on 2 particular days in which are best suited for rails.
Right.
That we would provide delivery to that location on those 2 particular days. So we will look at it a lot of different ways, to see what's more cost effective, for rails.
So you're using kind of a mix of things.
Yeah, it's a straight, exactly.
Yeah.
The 482 that Lasse was referencing are just the locations that we actually physically go to.
Right.
But the other 400 I would never go to,
Because it's not
set up under mail.
Right.
And then that's just dropping them right in the mail, and then they will receive their item that way.
I just wanted to make the comment that, in particular at Peoria Public Library, the training videos have been very helpful because we have lots of new staff at branches, and it's a great way for everybody to learn the exact same thing at the exact same time.
Great.
So that's been helpful. So thank you guys for that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Since your wife, since you're here now.
Do we have any other questions for Mark, either here or on video? No? Well, Mark, thank you for that. It was very informative. Over 5 minutes, but we won't charge you.
Take it off the next one.
That's why Mark only gets 5 minutes.
No, it's just.
I think it was a joke.
Mark loves to talk about delivery. He gets very excited about it.
Delivery is, I love delivery. I love logistics.
Right.
Yeah.
General, so they do have to cut me off, so.
It's like an Alberta tour.
Exactly. It's good that they're so enthusiastic.
Yes,
right?
that's what you want.
Exactly.
Okay, next up we have the Illinois State Library Report.
Good afternoon.
I would just like to say in advance, if you don't mind, sorry, but the State Library has great timing because we just got a check for $1.7 million. Thank you, Gwen and Karen.
You're welcome. So I'm going to, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk to you initially. Karen and I are going to tag team on this presentation. The school district library grant the deadline is October 15th. I've been working with Veranda and Dan. Weekly, I've been sending them an update on all of the schools that have completed the school district library grant, and out of about 700 school districts that are eligible for the school district library grant, about 350 have completed it successfully. So we're real happy about those numbers.
Okay. The Illinois Public Library annual report, which many of you are very familiar with, is due 60 days after the end of your library's fiscal year. Well, public library districts all due September 1st. Pat Berg is getting ready to lock down that information and close out the data, and is just about ready to submit that to the National Forum through IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, for inclusion in the national data collection. So thank you, everybody, for getting your reports in on time.
Next, Tried Illinois starts Monday, October 1st. I've been working with our to make sure that everything is all connected and up and ready to go. I've got 6 more vendors that I need to contact to make sure everything is all aligned. We will be sending you a memo on Monday with the login and password to share with your staff concerning the trial. Also, we'll be releasing emails to all libraries within Illinois with the login and password information to the trial.
Okay. November 19th is the date to mark your calendar. We're offering a program at the State Library that was actually featured at a pre-conference during the Association of Rural and Small Libraries just Stand Up for Health is an educational opportunity for staff at public libraries to learn about health and wellness services to support their communities. The participants will explore how to create fun and informative health-related programming for different age groups and special populations. They're going to learn about core print references and other materials for library collections, websites, applications beyond the commercial sites, and tips for helping library users evaluate health materials that they encounter on their own. Now, the problem is this program is limited to 25 people only, so it's the first 25 who register, because the course will provide 12 continuing education hours of credit for the Consumer Health Information Specialist certification that's available from the Medical Library Association. The cost of the certification and all of the programming is being underwritten by grant funds. So this will be a really wonderful opportunity for reference librarians or any library who wants to know more about health and wellness resources to take into their community.
And finally,
let me add, it's listed on L2. If you or your staff are interested in registering, go to November 19th.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. And finally, I'm going to talk about letters about literature. That information has gone out to school and public libraries. For those of you that are not familiar with it, this program encourages students to write a letter to an author about how reading a book changed their life or view of the world. I'll tell you that this past year, I had the privilege of reading the first batch of, I think I read about 1,000 letters. It was a lot of work, but it was really worthwhile reading. These students really try to do their best when they're presenting these letters. Public libraries are encouraged to promote this to their homeschoolers. Letters from the Illinois winners are forwarded to the Library of Congress for national competition, and we are so proud to say that last year, 2 out of the 3 national winners were from Illinois. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your chapter.
Thank you.
We are. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Illinois State Library. Moving on to new business. We are at item point 8, Rails Board Diversity and Representation. This is discussion only.
Yes, so there's a memo that, as I say, this is something that Laura, I think we talked about it last time too a little bit. Yep. So that's why it's on the agenda this time. So we've, in the memo here, I've just outlined a few important facts, namely that it is in the law that the in the System Act that a majority of the board shall be from the governing board of member public libraries, and then that board members shall be representative of the types of libraries. We also sent you some statistics on voting. And then in terms of diversity, we obviously were very interested in having as diverse a group of board members as possible. One particular area that we have had a lot of success with over the last couple of years has been geographic diversity. If you look at a map now, you'll see that we do have board members from all across the service area, and that was not always the case by any means. Obviously, other kinds of diversity, can always be improved upon. But I think it's also about, what you, I believe, Madam President, would like to have discussed today, chiefly, I guess, or first, is the issue of representation by type. So,
and I'll just add a little bit. I had asked that this put on the agenda. Just my experience being from a special library, which is a less represented seat on this board, that so much of the discussion does not center around things that will directly affect my library. Indirectly, yes, maybe, because good things that happen to libraries are good for all libraries. But directly, for my direct operations, not always a lot. So that was one reason I had thought about this, and I wondered if I was feeling the only way about this, so I did email Gwen, Gregory, and Christine and ask, because they are the academic and the school librarians, being the smaller majority again, did you feel it was worth talking about board diversity? And I know we've got some numbers here about the voting, but I think part of my thought was, if we mainly talk about public library things, does that mean that mainly public libraries are engaged? And if we are represented a little bit differently, will we be talking about more inclusive issues for all libraries? Therefore, maybe we would have more people running for these seats. Like, is there a vicious cycle that kind of happens here? Do you guys follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It makes sense here. I'm just making sure it makes sense there. So that's why I decided I'm not sure what will come of this discussion, but I thought I would at least just throw it out there and see what we thought.
So can I say something?
Sure.
Because I come from one of the really small libraries, I would say. And I think that most of the folks here are from libraries from mid to larger libraries. And I may be wrong on that. But I see Jay, I see you from, some nice sized libraries here, and then I see my little library that basically is not much bigger than this room here. And so I agree with you, Laura, because a lot of libraries have so many more resources, and they and it does become an over and over and over thing where those people from libraries have a lot more resources than these other sized libraries or different diverse community libraries are at. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
And I just want to add one quick thing before we move on. Hold on, Dave. I want to make sure this isn't a criticism of Rails or what we're doing, because I know that we make, and Dee, you've made a really good effort since I've been on the board. If I say, hey, special libraries need this to listen, it's not saying that that's not happening, because it is. And so I don't want this to come off as a criticism or to say nothing's happening in this space, but more to say maybe is there room for improvement. I just felt the need to say that.
I understand that.
Madam Chair, when I first joined Rails, and I became a library trustee, and I went to an ILA, and I'm from this part of the state, suburban. I live in the city, the Southern College. When I went to an ILA conference, and there were rural libraries there, and I was able to talk to individuals there to find out some of their concerns what they were facing. My question is, does special libraries do any sort of programming at that level so that librarians, trustees can learn more about special libraries, to raise the interest in special libraries and what they're doing?
Well,
rather
as
than-
a group they do, but I mean, there's the Illinois Special Library Association and then the Special Library Association. So they have their own group, yes, that does some work with that. But I think I was talking more about what's happening here. So we can go to a special library conference, yes, and hear about special library issues, but I wasn't just talking about special libraries. I was also talking about like school and academic and the representation here.
I can speak for school. We're a dwindling bunch. There's not as many of us anymore, and so unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So I don't know how many more. And as far as like representation on the board, I'm very fortunate that my district allows me to be part of this and have that release time because, I do have to have a sub and all that. So there is that aspect of it as well.
Sure.
I think it's also, and this could be true of any one of the niche kinds of libraries, whether it's public or special or whatever. But it's easy to look at those numbers, that breakdown, and go, wow, 8 public library trustees plus probably, some public seats in the at-large, that's quite a number. But within the realm of public libraries, there's a lot of, a lot of diversity in size and funding. And then there's also a huge difference in perspective from a trustee to a library employee, so there's, I'm not poo-pooing what you're saying, but I'm just saying that it's not like, wow, there's 12 public seats, oh my gosh, out of 15, but that's really, they're not all in lockstep with each other because they're covering a wide diversity of situations.
Yes, and just to speak to Michael's point a bit, I have not been to your library yet, but certainly Warren County is not a huge facility. They have 3 facilities, but they serve a very, very low population county, and it's one of our few county libraries. So that's an interesting perspective there. Kewanee is, lovely. A Carnegie building that's been completely redone, but not a big community. Not swimming in the dough, sure. Alpha Park is near Peoria, but you're not that big.
So
it's,
like Laura said,
yeah.
it is not a criticism at all.
Right.
I think that, but as you saw, probably from the election recently, there wasn't tons of people applying to be on the board either.
Well, and I think that was my point.
Yeah.
If you come to the board and there's very little for you, what's your motivation to want to participate?
Right.
Like, is it a cycle that if you're, why not join SLA Illinois, where you're going to be talking about some things that are pertinent to you versus Rails?
Well,
I don't mean this to, I'm just trying to kind of say, anyways.
And I'm not taking, I was just trying to I mean, it is, I think we do a pretty good job of covering the diversity, which I know you're agreeing. I'm just saying, there's so much diversity, that diversity is so diverse.
Right.
Yep,
And there's only
you
so
can
many
slice it
pieces.
in 20
Right.
more ways,
Exactly.
too.
You could slice it by standalones, you can slice it by, districts or whatever, yeah.
And
I think
we focus our recruiting efforts also, like what option do you think?
Well, we could certainly
explore?
recruit in different places. I mean, I'm looking at Mary because she has been
We do try to recruit all over. We have like regional lists that we send to. We go out and visit libraries in all areas of Rails. We try to recruit at that time. So we do, within the structure of the seats that we have now, we do try to.
Do we recruit via, the IO list, the school library list?
We do that, we do
Yes.
via the school newsletter.
Yep.
There's not a lot of
Academic.
avenues to recruit special libraries.
Right.
Academics, we do through ICRL. And we do visit, we have lists for all those libraries, as well as those libraries having lists for themselves, like Rails has a mailing list for each type of library. We recruit that way. So we do try, I welcome any
Yes,
ideas.
absolutely.
Well, and
Or if you can help us.
And I know that we'll always be probably one of the most smallest because that's just what we are. But I think mainly I was just wanting to see if we were good with how this is right now, if there was any room to make any adjustments. Not even maybe in the makeup, but maybe in some of our committees or things that we focus on, or even topics that would be more inclusive to all types of libraries. I mean,
Sure.
yeah. Because like when I look at L2, there's very little that really applies to me. So it's not maybe even in the board,
Talking
but
about CE or those?
yes,
is that what
like
you
the
mean?
continuing education, right? Like, is there some different ways to maybe be more? Yes.
So, I don't know how deeply we want to go down the rabbit hole I'm about to open, but I've served a few years on the ILA Public Policy Committee, and so this law that governs this and dictates that 8 of the 15 seats be public library trustees. I mean, this body went to ask that body to work on changing that law or trying to get it changed.
I think we have to determine, do we think it needs to be changed?
Well, I
For
think-
our purposes or state level, are you talking?
Pardon me?
For this board, are we just talking school labor?
I was talking this, but I don't,
Oh.
maybe Scott's
Well,
talking
again,
bigger.
That would
Oh.
change the law, which would change it
Right,
for the
right.
state, but, I mean, I think if there's any one group that's overrepresented, maybe, it's public library trustees, not necessarily public libraries, but public library
Right.
trustees. Like, instead of that 8, nothing against our trustee friends here. Instead of 8 seats being mandated public library trustees, maybe it's 8 seats are mandated public libraries, 4 trustees, and 4 not necessarily trustees. And then that'll cause all of us public librarians to stop, pushing to be on the at-large seats, because we could get into one of those other seats,
Right.
which would free up at-large seats for more
true.
special libraries or whatever. But working public librarians are always going to want to be on this board,
Right.
which means we're on top of it, in addition to that massive chunk of 8 trustees.
Well, and Gwen isn't here today either, because I know she had some concerns about the academic representation also.
And I know, Dave, I just want to say, before you say anything else, I just want to say, in terms of differences, making it different. When I got to Illinois, I was really surprised that trustees are on a board. Not perfectly wonderful, I love it.
Right, yeah, right.
But
It's
I
not
mean,
a
you
criticism,
go from
right.
state to state, it's different everywhere. So that there's nothing that says this is perfect and magic. The only thing that just to clarify, we have to have a minimum of 15 on the board, and personally, I think that's plenty.
Yeah.
But, and I think I'm saying this right. I know Karen, and I can tell Karen's probably studying something. It has to be, the trustees have to be a majority of the board, whatever the size is.
The way the law is currently written.
That's the way it's written now, yeah. Just to clarify a little bit.
So adding
I
more
think I'm
seats would
saying-
just require more trustees.
Exactly, yes.
So
Yes.
if we really wanted to institute that type of change, we would need to get the law changed.
Yep.
Right. And that's a pretty.
If I can jump in, this is Michelle at Monmouth. In my situation, I am officially representing the Warren County Public Library as a Board of Trustees member, but I'm also on the faculty at Monmouth College, and I'm a former academic librarian. So there may be others, in the room that kind of play that double role. And so, even though I'm always thinking about the public library, a little corner of my head, I'm also thinking about the academic library. And Sarah Henderson, who's the director of Hughes Library here at Monmouth College, and I are in communication. After the Rails meeting, I chat with her about what we talked about and so forth. So You know, we all have our official role, but it's possible that some of us have an unofficial affiliation as well.
This is Dee Runnels from her office in Davenport. And is this requirement for the 8 trustees from our bylaws, did you say, or is it from the some other governing dodocument?
It is in the law, Dee. It is 75 ILCS 10/5. Says each library
Okay.
system created shall be governed by a board of directors numbering at least 5 and I was wrong. No more than 15.
Oh.
Okay, I was going the wrong way. I bet that's what Karen was going to tell me. So
But
it
then,
has to
what
be.
does it say about the requirement of the public library trustees?
Except, let's see, the board shall be represented by the variety of library interests, and at least a majority shall be elected or selected from the governing boards of the member public libraries. I did attach this to the memo too, just for your ease of reading.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, it's in the
That,
statute.
That's those legislators weren't thinking clearly, because I like being on this. I don't always think that I'm the most common sense person to have on the board. I think it would be more important to have somebody from my library be on the board.
Well, that's where Scott was coming from.
But
As I
we're not
say,
going to get that statute amended. That's a
Well, I mean,
I didn't say that.
From my
Right.
experience on PVC, this would be the kind of change that probably very few legislators would care about.
Right.
Not to be
Right.
blunt about it. But
No, you're right.
It might not be difficult to get it changed.
Right. They may be like, okay.
Until they start hearing from their.
Right.
Maybe.
Illinois got bigger
I'm sorry,
problems
Dave
than
was
this.
going to say something.
No, what I was going to say, what you were mentioning about our activities, I was just thinking, like, Mark gave that report on delivery. What if we had something on our agenda on a regular basis about academic libraries, about special libraries, about these other areas that, as a public library, or actually until I got on Rails board, I didn't even know about special libraries
Right.
per se. If we had a regular report on them, what they did, how big they are, so, all this information.
I
It'd be helpful
think
to
that's
me.
a good idea. I mean, honestly, yeah. Yes.
And you can have pertinent issues brought up at every meeting.
What's happening now in
Right.
academic libraries?
Or just a little, yeah. I like it.
Sure, we could certainly do that.
Yes.
Yes.
And PPC is meeting on Monday. I mean, we can bring it up. There's no reason to not bring it up.
Yeah.
Just to see what the will of the group is.
Laura, I was thinking about when I read the memo and I was reading the documentation Dee provided, and then hearing what Christine said. I'd love to see us to find a way to engage more of the members of our system in it. And specifically, I'm not putting Christine on the spot, but you mentioned it, and I think about school libraries. The public library I serve and the community we serve, we're fortunate there is a staff person in each library, in each building, which is definitely not the trend. But, I just wonder if there's not methodologies where we can, one, advocate for how important school libraries are, just take a discrete chunk of our membership, that where Rails can do, explore other things with our school members, that engage them, help promote their worth, and actually that as a byproduct might spur more interest in the Rails board too. That's
Right.
something that you can't overstate. I think the importance of school libraries.
Right.
Well, this would be something that would be hard to get traction on, but we have discussed at PBC introducing legislation that would require schools to employ a librarian. And that would face a lot of opposition because they don't want people to mess with their ability to run their budgets the way they want to run their budgets.
The data shows what a difference a school library
Right.
makes in the success of their students.
Right. Well, and I know the school library association has also been working towards that same thing. We have the new linking for learning, and just like with ESSA, you know, a couple of years ago, like making sure that there's a certified school librarian in each school, because it's huge to the education of children.
It's in our standard, our proposed standards too, just so you know.
Well, and even like
Should
from
public
where
libraries be the advocate in their community for school libraries? Have information there where parents bring their children in, let them see what they're, let them advocate. Let people know when they go in there, oh, the school libraries need this, This is, I'm just talking off the top of my head here.
So at the
idea.
6 feeder elementary schools that Nicole, my library director, and I, because of Rails, I asked her, what school librarian, or, school districts belong to Rails. So we started calling and finding that out. 2 of the school districts belonged to Rails, but none of them had school librarians. They had technicians. And so she and I went and chatted with them.
Right.
And so much like you, well, they could come to do a CE, they could come do that, but they would have to, have a substitute. They would have to do all this kind of thing. So yes, that is a hugely important piece of encouraging that. And Scott, like you, I would highly encourage that they have a full-time teacher librarian in every school.
I agree that would be a tough hill, but I think it's a hill worth fighting.
Yeah, even like where we are at a corporate library, the more someone is exposed to a library before they get to employment, the more likely they are to use our services, and it all starts.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it all starts in school because that's where the kids are. I mean, really.
It's the largest classroom in the school.
Yeah.
I think where the rub comes in is, from maybe a fiscally conservative standpoint, you want to say to a school, you chose at some point to defund that and spend those dollars somewhere else. We don't want to now give you extra money to put the position back in place. We want you to put that money back where it was.
Right.
And they're going to say, like, well, that money's gone. It's spent on other things. Just give us more money. And that's where you lose half the public library. They already have all the money.
Right.
This came up a lot in our strategic planning, that how important school libraries are to just the success of people using libraries later on in life, and that public libraries and academic libraries in particular, at one of the sessions, we're talking about how we all have to work together to help school libraries, because otherwise, we're all going to sink together. It's really interesting, and it's
I think
called out.
Right, and sometimes the school library is the only library exposure that a child may have.
Right.
And so, and I in fact, I was just teaching a lesson to 3rd graders this week about finding books on the shelves. And I said, when you go into any library, whether it's public or whatever, you're going to be able to take these skills and use them, clear through your adult life. And so you're right, it's super important that we...
Unless they're unserved by public libraries.
I know, it's a whole vicious cycle,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, which problem do you solve first, right?
Yeah.
How many special libraries does Rail support right now?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head.
I looked at the
Hundreds.
list. Yeah,
It's
I want to say like
It's in the annual report, I will look.
about like 130.
I would have guessed
The amended vote document too. Presumably it's 1 vote per library, so there'd be.
So I looked at the list. I think most of the special libraries are medical.
Right, that's what.
Yeah.
That's what
Any
comes
of
to.
them.
Well, and I broke down our list. There's like maybe 12 science libraries in Illinois, which I thought was kind of cool.
Special libraries, like 193.
Oh, 193, yeah.
I have a question.
193, I
193.
think.
Yeah.
Special libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Right. And again, this was not just to advocate for specials. It was just for diversity in general.
Laura, I have a question. Would the at-large seats be an avenue to possibly seat more
They are.
on this particular board?
Right.
That would be the easiest way, because that's just us amending our bylaws, which does require a 2/3 vote.
So,
Just
okay, so now it's just open to public library
No, it's
Oh.
open to anybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the at-large seats, and we did give you some statistics that shows, definitely non-public librarians are running for the at-large seats.
Okay.
Definitely, and over the past few years, more and more, which I think is
Right.
because we're really trying harder.
I think we had an academic in the last, right.
Yep, let me see, the most recent one we had at-large seats open. We had, if I can read this, July 18, we had 3 at-large seats open, and we had 2 school library candidates, no special library candidates, an academic library candidate, a public library, we had 8 public library candidates, and all 3 seats were filled by public libraries.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Just because they vote a lot. I mean, it comes down to that old thing about voting, if you don't vote, then,
Vote early, vote often.
yeah, right,
Right.
that's the Illinois, yeah.
Right.
And certainly, if the school libraries in particular, because you're the most,
Right.
you mobilized, you would win everything.
Right.
I mean, so that just, but is that because what comes first? They don't vote because they're not interested, or because of what the way
Right.
Laura's saying, well, there's nothing that interests them. I mean, I'm overstating, but
I get
But
your- right.
it's what's the chicken and what's the egg kind of.
Well, and maybe it comes for advertising to school libraries, and I mean, for me, it's like our district takes care of all the Rails stuff and everything, and so the average school librarian in my district really isn't gonna know a whole lot about all that until now, because I tell them, but maybe it's more advertising or advocating that here, this is Rails and this is what we do and you're part of it, and to take part in that. Just a thought.
So I have a couple suggestions.
Okay.
That's okay. I
Sure.
think we should keep this on the agenda
Yes.
because Gwen wasn't here to speak to it.
Right.
That's just one reason, but I think just because we don't really know quite what the answer is.
Right.
I think we should talk to PPC and look at, we could certainly do more reports by library type, that's easy, or about issues of interest to different library types.
Sure.
That's what I'm hearing so far. Any other suggestions today?
I think it's a good start on the discussion.
Okay.
I appreciate that you brought it up.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks.
Always trying to do better, like you said.
Right. Not trying to make meetings longer, sorry.
Obviously, interesting topic for everyone.
Right.
So I just crunched a bunch of numbers. Out of our 15 seats, if the seats were allocated by percentage of total libraries in Illinois that each type is, there would be 5 public library seats, 2 academic seats, 6 school seats, and 2 special
Right.
seats.
And I think that's what I was getting at. How we look more like that.
Right.
Because that's representative of, and then once you have that, does what your board does become more representative of the entire group?
Right. And it's that law that somebody pointed out, the legislators, who knows what they were thinking. They ordered it that way, but that's the problem right now. It's the law.
The system started out as purely public library system.
Right.
Right.
That
I'm sure
has
that's
a lot
where-
to do with it.
That's where
Right.
it came from.
And I think there needs to be some work done, at least for me, from being a special, in getting the specials more engaged. I mean, in what we're doing. They have some responsibility to vote too, if they want to be a part of things.
Yeah, the other angle I would say is, it was interesting Dee listed the candidates in the last series of election. Obviously, there's a strong pool of public library practitioners who are interested in serving on the Rails board, and this is the at-large seats are their only venue to serve at this time. And public libraries with the mix of Rails services that are currently offered, a lot of which are actually mandated. Public libraries are the largest consumers of those services, which spurs the interest. Sure.
Right.
Do you have anything you want to say, State Library? Well, you know, it's a state law, so.
It's your fault.
No,
You see Karen and I chewing over this, don't you? Because we're chewing over it, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at this discussion.
This is really good discussion,
It
and I'm glad
is.
you're keeping it on the agenda.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well,
Great.
can we close this discussion till next meeting then?
Yep.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. All right. Good discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We are at, I believe, 8.3, which is our annual report. And Dee, I think that is you.
I'm sure it is. I just don't know where it is. Well, in any case, you have the annual report. It is due to the State Library on September 30th. And obviously the audit is part of the annual report, which is why we always try to get the audit done in time, and did this year, thanks to Jim. So I would hope that you would accept it. That's just a report, you know, to accept it, and so that we can send it on to the State Library. It is just it's a report of what happened this year. There's no like policy, you know, development or yeah. So, and obviously we are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Would that be accepted? Is that what we're going for here?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
All right, I'll make that motion.
So,
I'll second.
I did not catch the second. We have Scott moved.
Michael.
There was two at the same, I'll second it.
Oh,
Okay. So we have moved by Scott and seconded by Christine. Emily, will you please call the roll?
Christine Barr.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michelle Campbell. Michael Campbell, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's his
Liza
alter ego.
Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Beaton.
Yes.
Dee Runnels.
Yes.
Nadia Shake.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Laura Turner.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, we will move on to 8.5, disposal of surplus inventory. Mark here? Oh, yeah, he's there. I didn't see him in the corner there.
You guys have the memo in your file. Packet. Guess are there any questions concerning disposing of the vehicles? Any questions concerning the process?
I'm just, what does disposal mean? Like, does it mean you sell it or throw it away or scrap it?
Because of the fact that there's very little value in a lot of these vehicles because of their the age, their mileage, or the repair costs, you know, that we will most likely be
Scrapping it.
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious. Do we have any questions about this before we do a roll call? Okay, thank you, Mark. May I have a motion to approve for the disposal of the surplus vehicle inventory?
I'll second.
Okay, that's moved by Tom, second by Nadia. Emily, can you please call the roll?
Christine Barr.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Dee Mills.
Yes.
Nadia Shake.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
And Laura Turner.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, unfinished business. We are on to the strategic plan. And Dee, I think this is you again.
Yes. So, okay, so there's a memo. We did provide, we talked about it last month as well. We did make some minor editorial changes, moved a few things around, added some language of diversity. There's track changes in your packet as well as a pure, untracked, easy to read version. So I think that this has been a really good process. Great feedback, and I think that I think it's going to be a very dynamic plan. The next steps will be that we will, once the board approves it, release it to talk to the members about it, and do an executive summary to make it easy to get a high point and make it look really beautiful, even more beautiful. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you have any comments, suggestions. Either here or anywhere else. Monmouth State Library, looks like Robert has left us.
Do we have any questions or comments for Dee at this point?
This is the state library, like the changes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great staff input too.
I actually think it's a really good plan. I like it.
Good.
Okay, can I have a motion for the approval of the rail strategic plan?
So moved.
Okay. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Jay, second by Liza. Is this all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, item 9, board committees, task force, and engagement. This is discussion and possible action. Dee, this is you again.
I know, I'm sorry. There's no memo for this. We did talk about this some at the last meeting, and with some agreement about some possible committees. So I called some of my colleagues in other states to get their input on this, and it was interesting to learn that in a number of cases they did have a advocacy committee. They called it different things, but a board committee that was focused on understanding the issues and but being advocates not only for Rails but for their own libraries. So I did add that and this is all just suggestions, these committee charges. And so what I did include were were charges for the board advocacy committee and board unserved, or a committee on the unserved, which the way I was seeing this is that the advocacy committee would probably just be board members. Is that what I said? I think. Yep. And staff, but it could be others. It just seemed that made sense in terms of what we were trying to do. And then the committee on the unserved would be a broader committee because it affects, lots of libraries and users. I wasn't thinking of having users, but that might be it, or not unserved people. That might be interesting. I also included the job description because it did strike me that I remembered that it said in the job description, which we can look at a little bit now. We did talk about being on committees, but I think it's struck me that that's really just one way of being engaged in Rails or being informed. That there's lots of things that you can be doing that's part of the job description, including going to member meetups. I know that Jay has been to some, and I'm sure I know Tom has. I'm sure all of you, visiting, going to board meetings in different areas of Rails. I think is really informative. So I just wanted to sort of raise the profile of that a little bit too. Anyway, that's what you've got here, our draft committee charges, and I'm happy to make changes, or if you want to approve them as are, that's up to you. But
I just want to comment that, excuse me, Scott.
Go ahead.
Dan does a fantastic job of representing and presenting Rails. I went to Green Hills Public Library in Palos Hills, and if you exclude the executive director and her assistant director, there were only 2 other attendees. That hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts. I don't know what kind of advertising or marketing you do to get the word out, other than on the Rails website, L2 Learning, I guess, on the calendar of events. but only 2 others were.
I have a
presented.
theory about that.
Okay.
They are very close to Burr Ridge.
Oh.
And I think they're just sick of us. Not really, but I mean, it's really easy for them to come here. You know, they're members of SWAN.
Right.
Members of SWAN. Because generally, we do get a better.
And actually,
because
Dan and I were just talking
Yes.
about that. And he's going to try to not schedule so many in the Burr Ridge area for that very reason.
Yeah.
He said the exact
Yeah.
same thing.
When I drove down to Sheridan, Illinois,
Yes.
Peoria, it was a full room.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah. So I think, which is all the more reason for us to, we know we have to get out. But then sometimes we feel guilty that we don't visit libraries near us, and then we find out that we don't need to, really.
Right.
So, anyway.
So I just had a quick comment and one quick question. I think the A/Task Force on the Unserved is a fantastic idea. I totally support that. And then for the advocacy, when you spoke to your counterparts in other states, those that had a committee like this, do they also have a state association that's doing that exact same thing?
Yes.
Because we do.
Yes. Oh, no, this was just a way for board members to be informed and then be more effective advocates
Oh, okay.
for the state. So, yeah, it's not no, I didn't mean to write it that way. If I did. It's not to develop a whole new advocacy arm.
Okay.
No, it's to be more helpful
Okay.
for ILA or IACRL or even ALA on the national level, because that's important too. So,
Would the idea of advocating for school libraries fit under this committee?
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
Here's your answer right
Yeah.
there.
Right, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
there was a very interesting comment
Yes,
was made.
thank you.
And I forget which ILA, it was some sort of ILA meeting I was at.
Perfect.
Probably PBC. But somebody said, well, it seems like ILA just works on public library things. Like, it sounds familiar,
Yeah.
Right.
And somebody made the comment, well, that's because special libraries have an association and school library have an association. There isn't a public library association.
Right.
So ILA is the association that
Right.
public libraries
Right.
have to follow through, so it's the only one.
And I would agree with you. I served on ILA for 3 years, and it was predominantly public library discussion, but we did have school discussion in there because, like and especially discussions with our, from the state, on the policies and the House bills and that type of thing.
Sure.
Property tax affects school libraries, all those things. So.
Right.
So I think that, not only are we, even though we might just be a small representation on the board, big picture, it all works together.
Yeah. And at public policy, we even had discussion about getting together with the president of the School Library Association, to understand better their needs so we can be better advocates. Because even at public policy, it's not all public libraries, mostly, wouldn't you say, Scott?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say it's probably 85% public
Yeah,
library.
so, public librarians, they're just
They're everywhere.
hungry.
Right.
They're greedy.
Well, we discussed that though, and someone pointed out is that is their only outlet.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
True.
That's a great idea that would be a great way for this committee to be helpful in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Including to funnel information back up to the board. So changes in these, if you want to think about it for another month, and if you want to say approved, go forth and form committees, it's completely up to you. Yes, Dave?
Could we table this for another month, for
You
the next
bet.
month?
Right.
So I can,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just said possible action because I
Right.
didn't want to limit you all if you did want to. And then Gwen will, presumably, maybe Gwen and Daisy will be at the meeting next month, and that would be good to have their input too.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so since we're not taking any action, we will just move on to item point 10, which is Rails board members. And the purpose of this item is to let the board know of any events or programs that are going on in your library or the area. Do we have any board members that have any news they would like to share?
At my library, we are going to have a TEDx day on this Sunday, we're having a TEDx, whatever you conference.
Right.
Yes.
Great.
That's awesome.
This is our second one.
That's a good idea.
So it's for the public.
Second or third. Yes, it's very limited, based on the size of our meeting room, but yes, the public is invited to attend.
Cool.
I have one. So each of you are invited to a private event. So on October 19th, the Fox River Grove Library is having their grand reopening at 7 p.m. So this next week you'll get an email with the actual invitation. And so your staff will get an email and the
Great.
board of directors will get an email from me. And it will give you the details. And if you can RSVP back to Nicole, who's the library director, we would appreciate that. So we're having the official grand opening the next day.
Oh.
With the
VIP.
We're having the board of trustees all kicked in and got the donations, and we're having the private event the night before. So so there'll be alcohol, all those kinds of things.
You probably said the magic.
Right.
It's an over 21 event. So, but yes, that's Friday, Fox River Grove. So at the public library.
Congratulations. Thank you, yes.
Go ahead.
I recently had the opportunity to go to the rector's meeting of it's I-80 74 West, okay? And the one thing that they did, there was quite a bit of discussion about Find More Illinois there. And I think, what, we have 3 people out of that group already.
We have 3 RSA members now that have committed to joining the expanded program, including Alpha Park and Kiwani.
Awesome.
And 8 overall at this point.
Great.
Got another one today.
And I think quite a few of those people attended your event as well in East Peoria, so I just report that.
Great.
Sue, did you have?
I do. October 27th, Kiwani is sponsoring their annual Music at the Carnegie.
Yep.
It's a night of music, and we have a lovely dinner beforehand catered by a local restaurant, PL Tamarins. Tickets are on sale for $35 and starts about 6 o'clock, social hour and dinner. So, and this year's theme is A Night in Paris. I don't know what we're going to be hearing, but it's A Night in Paris. Cheers.
I'm there.
Yeah, you love it.
Yeah. So anyway, something we've done for a number of years. It's nice. Fills the house.
It does. I did go.
It's cool.
Yeah, I've been, yeah. It's amazing how many people you can get in that library.
Squeeze us in.
I'm happy to report on October 13th, Saturday, we have White Oak Author Fest at our library in Crest Hill. And we have over 50 authors signed up. Most of those are local authors, but we have Sarah Paretsky as our keynote speaker coming in to speak at 11 a.m., so we're very excited about that.
Nice.
This isn't coming up, but this is what happened on September 1st. At the Bartlett Library, we had the Lions bring their hearing test bus there. We tested 47 people for hearing loss. It's a bus that has hearing. They hear different song. They give you a result as to what your hearing loss is, if any. You can take that to a professional if you want to go get hearing loss. They provide this service for free. So if you're interested in it, contact me. I'll get you the contact number. I'm the current president of the Bartlett Lions. But it helps people. We had all age groups, from kids all the way up to older than me.
That's great.
We are participating in Manufacturing Day 2018, trying to figure out how to relate libraries to manufacturing.
All right.
But we've got some activities that actually do so.
You know, speaking of well, not anniversaries, but when you said 2018, it just reminded me that I learned the other day, and maybe you know this, but that next year, 2019, is the 200th anniversary of Illinois being a state.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's probably an important anniversary to celebrate.
Will
Yeah,
we?
there's been a big bicentennial, like, push in the state for programs.
Yep.
Will there be a bunch of rails, or will they do anything?
I'm sure
Sure,
that many
right.
libraries will.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else anyone would like to share? Nope. Okay, we are on
Ronald's in
to.
the Davenport office. I just want to mention that we have a budding author who's a member of the Moline Public Library, Lucy Lareau, Lareau, and her mother, Liz, have written a graphic novel for tween kind of ages called The Geeky Fab Five. And it's getting really good press, and it's causing quite a stir. And we're going to have, obviously, a program featuring Lucy. Really an engaging book. It's fun.
That's great.
Great.
So
It's, if you know her, it's checked out a lot in my library at school. The kids love it. So,
Really?
so you can.
and,
Yeah.
and who's this?
This is Chris Barr. I'm the school librarian
And where?
in Geneva, Illinois.
Oh, okay, good. I'll tell them.
Yeah.
I need
Okay.
to go over and get my copy autographed. So yeah, I'll tell them.
Okay.
That's great.
All right. Agenda building for the next Rails Board meeting. The next meeting will be at our Cole Valley location. Travel information will go out soon, so please respond in a timely manner. And we will have the quarterly consortial reports.
And
There's an and, but there's nothing after the and, so I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say.
We're going to be talking more about committees and engagement and representation, and also as Jane said, we'll have the resource sharing plan.
Oh, nice. Great.
So, among other things, yeah.
All right, we are finally at 12. Item point 12, adjournment. With no more business, I thank you all for your attendance, and I call this meeting adjourned at 3:22 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance and participation. And safe travels back to wherever